Welcome to the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast, the podcast dedicated to simplifying the commercial real estate industry for the masses. Each week, we sit down with industry experts to dissect the many facets of commercial real estate and extract valuable lessons you can apply to your business. Whether you're a new or seasoned business owner or investor, the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast will be your go-to resource for all your commercial real estate needs. Now, here are your hosts, Raphael Collazo and Jeff Walston.
Welcome to the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast. I'm your host, Raphael Collazo, here with my co-host, Jeff Walston. How's it going, my friend?
It's going great. I can't complain over here. Business is good, moving along. Personally, everything's great. I can't complain. What about you, Raphael? How's it going over there?
Good. Everything's going well. I mean, the wedding is creeping ever closer, so
Yes,
it's
it
an
is.
exciting time. On the professional front, just a lot of leasing as of late. The Fed has been leading, or at least indicating that they're likely going to raise rates again. And so, the buying activity has been a little slow as of late, but I'm sure that as we start correcting the inflation, values we're seeing, we'll probably start removing some of the restrictive policies. And so, I'm thinking by early to mid next year, we'll start seeing a little bit of a loosening, which will open up the capital markets a bit more. But other than that, I mean, everything else is good. Personal life's great. Business life is doing well. And, just trying to get to the end of the year with a bang. And speaking of just a phenomenal conversation and just a really insightful discussion pertaining to brokerage and investing, we had the honor and privilege of interviewing Brigitte Owens, who is a commercial real estate agent with PRG Commercial here locally in Louisville, Kentucky. I met Brigitte when prior to her jumping into the agency space. I believe she was still as a principal at an elementary school here locally. That's kind of where her original experience was. And during the discussion, we talked about a variety of different things. One primarily being the transition away from what she was doing before, which was a principal of an elementary school, and then diving into the brokerage space. A lot of the people that we've interviewed across the nation have kind of showcased, it's kind of the diversity of people transitioning from a variety of different careers. We've interviewed people who were in the military that transitioned to brokerage. We've interviewed people who were doing completely different careers and then jumped into the commercial real estate brokerage space. So it is not a unique, you don't have to necessarily you fit into a mold in order to actually move into the space. Along with that, we kind of touched on a little bit of her early struggles in the business. As a woman of color, she's one of probably the only ones in Louisville in particular that are operating strictly in the commercial space. And so she's kind of gotten outside of the market as far as reaching out to mentors across the nation to try to, establish herself and learn the tricks of the trade, as they say, from individuals who, have a similar background, color, and creed. And so, her hope is that she can eventually become, or she is a model for individuals who are looking to do something similar, that have a similar background to herself. And then finally, we touched on a variety of different topics pertaining to her investment career. She is also a commercial real estate investor and started off in the office condo space, buying up just small office condos, and then got into redevelopment of a variety of different projects, one being a mixed use project here locally, and then ultimately getting into the multifamily space as well. So really just a wealth of knowledge, information, and insight. It was a great discussion, and I learned a lot from it. So, Jeff, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Like you said, I mean, she's very passionate about helping people. And from her prior career being a principal to going into commercial real estate and it's being an investor, I know that's helped her tremendously with all the deals and everything. So I was grateful, and I can't wait for everyone to listen to Brigitte and the advice that she gives. I think it'll help everyone if they listen to it. So on that note, I just wanted to say we appreciate all the reviews. We appreciate everyone going out there and telling people about our podcast. And so I always like to say that I would, the show is free to listen to and watch on YouTube, but we would like you to reach out to someone that you will find that would benefit to our podcast. We're trying to reach as many people as possible and to educate, and that's what this is about. So if you can just one person that you find or who could be interested in commercial real estate and all the facets that it is. So we would greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And, obviously we're very humbled by the insights and the reach out, the responses that we've gotten from people. And it's just a testament to the fact that, the people that we've been able to engage with over the course of this podcast have just been able to provide so much value. And so we're thankful to our guests and ultimately to you guys for being willing to engage and ultimately share with your network so that we can reach the broadest audience possible. Along with that, we would greatly appreciate if you could leave a 5-star review. I think now we're eclipsing or just north of 60 reviews, which is amazing. It really showcases the value that we try to provide on a day-to-day basis. And it really does make an impact on people's decision to first start listening to the podcast. So if you don't mind, go to Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star review. If you're listening to this on Spotify, that has the functionality as well. Obviously, don't do that if you're driving right now or doing anything that requires your attention. But as soon as you get a chance to, we would greatly appreciate it if you could stop and give us a review. It really does mean the world to us. So again, thank you all so much for your support. And without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right into the podcast. Well, hey, Brigitte, great to see you this fine afternoon.
How are you doing?
Yeah, thanks for coming on. We appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely.
Glad to be here.
Absolutely. And for those of you guys who are tuning in, Brigitte is actually local to us. She's here in Louisville. And so we're really looking forward to diving into her backstory because it really is an interesting one. And we've interacted in a variety of different capacities locally. And, again, I'm just really excited to dive in and learn more about you on a personal level. So one thing I wanted to kind of touch on was the first thing we like to do is we like to learn a little bit more about the backstory of the individual that we ultimately have on the podcast. So if you don't mind kind of sharing your backstory, I think that'd be awesome.
Okay. Well, I guess I start off is that this is a second career for me as far as commercial real estate. I actually just retired. I was a elementary principal for about 23, 24 years. So
Bless your heart.
I know, right? Right.
Yeah.
And even before I retired, I had started into as far as an investing in commercial real estate. So, as you're thinking about your second act, I was just kind of thinking, what was I going to do next? And so the natural progression direction would be real estate. But I'll be honest with you, Raphael, and I really had thought about doing residential. It was just in my head. I'm going to do residential. That's what, I'm going to do. I'm going to do that. Never even thought about commercial. And, 90% of our what we invest in as far as property is commercial. So I had a really good friend, and actually she was my agent at the time, Jenny Johnston, said, Brigitte, why are you thinking about that, doing residential when everything is commercial? You ought to consider. And it was like a light bulb. And I was like, yeah, I guess I need to do that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's also an interesting story as well, because, most people who come into the industry, it isn't always necessarily something that they thought they would do. In my case, this was a second career. For other people that have jumped in the business, in particular on the brokerage side, I feel like they either fall into it or for some reason they have family members that are into it, and it's just kind of a natural progression for them. And it's kind of predestined as far as what they do. And so, it's kind of interesting to hear your backstory because, I'm sure people who are listening that are deciding what they want to do as far as whether or not they want to go residential commercial can maybe relate with your story about making that decision, because you're right. I mean, it's not necessarily an obvious trajectory for a lot of people. A lot of people think primarily when they think real estate, they think residential, but there's such a broad spectrum of things you can explore on the commercial end. And so you definitely don't want to, not explore it if that's something you'd be interested in. So.
And I guess for me too, I feel there just were not a lot of role models, and more particular role models that look like me, who happen to be women of color. So, it just was nothing I ever thought about, but I realized what an opportunity, but how rare I am in this position. And it's just a blessing that I'm in this position. And hopefully I can bring others, because I started to try to connect with people, because that's what I do, connecting with, mentors. And I couldn't find any that looked like me. And so then I started to research, and it was like, only 2%, African Americans make up 2% of the commercial real estate industry, and only 1% the African American females make up the industry. So I've really had to branch out to get to have people to mentor me that look like me. So it really is, as far as a dedicated commercial real estate. Let me just say that, because I know people do dibble and dabble. So I didn't realize it. And I think that was probably the reason that I never thought about it, because I had never seen anybody that looked like me doing these kinds of things.
Yeah, I mean, here in the market, you're unique in that sense, and that you're kind of leading the charge when it comes to, you know, commercial real estate brokerage for African American females in particular. And so I'm, you know, again, what you're doing is showcasing that it is possible, and hopefully people who listen to this podcast understand that, you know, there are opportunities in the industry, and in particular, it doesn't really matter what you look like, it doesn't matter where you come from, your background. You know, and we've had the opportunity to interview people from all across the nation, from all different colors and creeds, and the lesson's the same. It's like they all have different backgrounds. They all have different ways that they got into the industry, and all it matters is that they have a passion about helping others, in particular business owners and investors, secure what they're looking for as far as the commercial real estate needs is concerned. And as long as you have that interest and you're willing to fight through the adversity that comes along with being in the space, you'll be successful. So, you know, I'm hopeful for, you know, your future success in the business, because I think it is very bright.
And what I will say, I've only been doing it for 7 months, and but being on the investor side, I mean, I know what an investor wants, and there's simple things, you know. I'm like, you know, I didn't realize how good of a investor I was until I got on this side. Like, you know, I made quick decisions, you know, I followed through, you know, I was ready to roll. I made it to closing, all those things. And I just really try to treat my clients the way I want to be treated. You know, I want them to return my phone calls. I want them to follow up. I want them to, you know, push. And you know, and I'm sure you do too, you know, I stay up at night worrying, like, how am I going to get this done? How am I going to, you know, close this deal? And I kind of use a lot of the things that I learned in education. When our kids did not do as well as we wanted them to on standardized tests, we always took it personal. You know, it was never, well, it's because of the family. It's because it was like, what are we not doing? And that's the kind of same way I take commercial real estate. If something is not moving, I'm thinking, okay, what else can I do? Well, because it's personal to me. You know, I feel like if, you know, it's something that I'm not doing, you know, and that's kind of the way I've taken it. And, you know, I've been able to kind of, you know, push out real fast and get some deals done.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that kind of is a testament to the mentality that's required to be successful in the space, is that you almost have to, you know, will these deals to the finish line. And a lot of times, you know, it can be a profession sometimes that it's not necessarily a thankless profession, because there's definitely certain situations where you put in a lot of effort to get to the finish line, and there's nothing you can do. Things are out of your control, and you're not able to take that approach every single day. You know, over time, that ultimately leads to success. But you have to take that personal approach with your clients, because ultimately, you know, they're putting their faith in you to getting them to the finish line. So,
yeah. Brigitte, I know that the adversity, I know Raphael on other episodes, we've discussed that, and it is a very huge thing in commercial real estate. And I applaud you, and especially for stepping in and just, you know, you're ready, you rolled up your sleeves and you're tackling it. And that's amazing. I know a lot of our listeners are actually just now getting into the commercial real estate realm, or are just going into the brokerage side, or even investing. Can you kind of elaborate on some of the things that you've in your early struggles, transitioning from just an investor now going into the brokerage side, that you may have, you know, pushed through, and now you're, you know, you figured it out, or was there anything that stands out to you?
Yeah. And you know, as an investor, and I just quickly how I even got into buying commercial real estate. It was kind of by chance. I used to go to a hair salon, and this girl owned the hair salon. It was a she occupied the top and there was a chiropractor at the bottom. So, and she couldn't sell it. And I was like, she reduced the price. I was like, I think I might buy it. It was just a great time. My daughter was going to college and I was like, I've got to figure something out, just something else to do. And I kind of started like that, and I was like, well, I kind of like this because I've got, 2 people. So if one bails out, the other, I'll have the other leased and that's kind of how, and then I just started kind of picking up things. As and sometimes lessons, your bought lessons, as my grandmama used to say, are some of the best lessons that you have. And one of the ones that I have found, especially with office space, is that office space in Louisville, and Raphael and I have talked about this before. It's hot. I mean, Jeff, it is hot. If it's in the East End, it's going. But you have to renovate your space for people to want it. They're not going to just want it because you have it. And so one of my, bought lessons, as I've said, is one where I had a property in Indiana, and it's a great office space. It's like a house in multiple rooms. Someone convinced me not to do anything to it. And it was definitely back in the early 1990s. Okay. I'll give it 2000s. The wallpaper, you remember the wallpaper border that people, it had all of that in mauve, it was definitely back there. And, someone was just convincing me, oh, Bridget, it's going to lease, it's going to lease out. It's going to lease. It didn't. And and my sister came from Texas and she's actually an investor herself. And she said, Bridget, you got a problem. And I was like, she said, if you want this space, look at, and she showed me, look at all these other spaces and the way they look and look at yours. And I was like, yeah, I got to get busy. And so I spent, Jeff, a whole year of a listing that probably could have been leased out in, in a month or two. If I had just taken the money and the time to redo it. And so that's what I did. And I painted it, I put new carpet, I put new lighting in, and within a month I had it leased out. And I try to get my clients to understand that, because all they're thinking about is the capital expenditures that they're using. Like, well, Bridget, if I do, it's going to take me $10,000 to get this done. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But you're going to get it leased out. Think about the whole year and a half that we've been sitting here talking about this space, as Raphael is saying. Yeah. And, and then it's improving your building. So, I think that was one. Another one, Jeff, I think that is really important is make sure that you have your property at market rate. We've been through that before where, you like somebody, and I'm the softie. My husband is kind of like the one that's like, and, Miss so-and-so, she's so sweet. And, or Dr. So-and-so, we're not going to go up on the rent. We're not going to do that. And then what happens is you try to sell it. And we know with commercial real estate, it's based on the income that is producing. And if you don't do that, that is increase the rent and make it market rate. You're not benefiting yourself, as far as your investment. So if I tell anybody that's getting into it, I think those are two: update and make sure that you increase the rent to market rate.
Yeah. That's super smart.
Great advice.
Super smart. Yeah. And sometimes it is a hard conversation to have, especially on the brokerage end, when you're trying to advise your clients about something like this, like reinvesting money into their space, because they do look at that dollar sign at the front end and they're like, oh, like that's going to cost me a bunch of money. But the opportunity cost on the other end is something that no one ever considers. And we've had the chance to interview a lot of people across the nation. There was one gentleman we interviewed who had a landlord who was adamant about not spending money on this large office building to get it broken up into different parts because they had this big tenant, and it sat vacant for 4 years. So imagine what happens over 4 years of that thing being vacant because you're not willing to put in, a certain amount of money into getting it ready to go for other tenants. And obviously that's a really large example that maybe doesn't apply to everyone, but the same applies regardless of what scale you're operating at. Is that the lesson itself is that if the competition, because we're competing with other spaces, you're not the only space in that vicinity. And so if you want to attract the best tenants, you got to make sure that when they look at your space, they're wowed and they're able to realize and picture themselves in the space. And so that's some great advice.
There's actually a rule of thumb that I've kind of come to, since I'm a commercial general contractor. And so it's actually on the office space, it's been 8 to 10 years that you need to actually renovate your space to keep up with the times. Because like you said, Bridget, it gets out of date. And then next thing you know, they ain't wanting that, they've already updated their house and their business. They want that to look, modern and everything else. So, but yeah, that's definitely a great advice that you gave there. And hopefully that'll help some investors get over that sting of, $10,000-$20,000 up front. But like you said, I mean, years and years of not leasing it. It's wow. Imagine what that was could be in your pocket.
Yeah.
Give 20 grand and put 200,000 in your pocket. So,
absolutely. And
where we
the
at
mental and the mental space, like a lot of people don't realize, like it's the stress that comes along with not having, you're always thinking about it. Like what is peace of mind worth? Sometimes it's hard to really put that into, a quantity. And so, I mean, before I was different too, in that, I didn't put as much of a premium on peace of mind, but now it's like, if I can guarantee that something's going to occur, I'm much more likely to just shell out the little bit extra to make it happen, because I don't want to have to worry about like the fact that this could potentially be an issue down the road. It's one of those things that it just makes, at least for me, that's what, I value.
And I'll tell you another thing, and just as we're talking, and I don't like to have these conversations, but reducing the price. Sometimes when our client has a certain number that they want, but and we do it, but the market's like screaming. It's not, how we say, well, the market will tell, it's screaming, you got to reduce it. And if you think about it, and I've been there, and that's why I think it makes me a better agent, because I don't just go in and say, or just send an email, I think you just need to reduce, and this is why you need to. I'm like, I understand how those tough and those difficult conversations are. And I try to be sensitive, because, this is this person is paying the note, or this is this person's investment. And if we just come across real flippant and just say, you just need to reduce it because that's where it is, they're going to be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. But those are conversations, tough conversations that you have to have. And, and sometimes you risk them saying, well, maybe I just need to find another agent. I haven't found it yet, but that's a risk. But I just feel like I owe it to them at some point in time to have that conversation. They get to choose what they do with it, but I'm not being a good agent if I don't have those tough conversations with them. And I think dealing with parents for 24 years gives me, because I tell people all the time, I was a better principal when I had kids, because, you have that understanding. And, that's a tough conversation that you have to have, but, you think about it, you're like, golly, you mean, if you reduce it, let's just say $10,000-$15,000, you'll get it sold, as compared to having it another 2.5 years.
Yeah, no, I get it. No, that's some great advice. And I kind of wanted to explore a little bit on that front related to your previous experience as a principal, because I feel like some of the skills that you developed in that space probably are going to immensely help you in a variety of different facets, but in particular in brokerage. So what are some of the skills that you think that, really have helped you as you made the transition over to what you're doing now?
It's helped me in a number of ways. Working within my my brokerage firm, I tell people all the time that the most important pieces to a structure or an organization is not what's in the handbook. Somebody can give you a handbook and say, these are the things that you need to do. The most important piece are those interpersonal things, those things that are not written, those unwritten rules. And so being, a successful principal for 20 something years, I've kind of learned that skill set, being able to kind of navigate, learn what everybody needs from an organization. Everybody needs something, and I think that has kind of helped me kind of push forward a little quicker within my organization. Outside of it, just, of course, knowing how to work with people. Also, since I have been in the community for so long, people just understanding that I'm doing something different. They already know me, they know me as Dr. Owens. Now they know me as, oh, Dr. Owens, you're selling real estate now. And you wouldn't believe the amount of referrals that I've gotten from parents and from the community. But I think that has a lot to do with, I was always helping people. I mean, anytime, I could help people when I was a principal, I was doing it, and I think it's the same thing with us, being, in real estate and commercial, we're there to serve. I know Reed always talks about that, our broker, we're here to serve, and anything we can do to give a service. So now, because I feel like I've done a lot of good for people, people are just in turn, I get referrals all the time from people, they might not buy anything, but somebody else will. So I just think, when you treat people good, good comes back to you. And just that interpersonal piece, I think is just huge, being able to relate to people and then being able to serve. And I think that's what has really helped me, and, what I did for forever and understanding.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and the ideology that, reciprocity comes when you give. There's so many books out there that talk about it. It's that if you continually give, eventually things start coming around. That's just how life works. I mean, that people are attracted to people who are positive. People are attracted to people who genuinely care about helping others. And so, that type of energy that you put out into the world ultimately will come back to you tenfold. At least that's my belief in life as well. And so, I'm glad that you're able to translate that in the principal side now over to brokerage and investing, because it is a skill set that, in my opinion, is probably the most important in any type of business. It doesn't matter if it's brokerage. It doesn't matter if it's construction. It doesn't matter if it's tech on the commercial end. Again, it's just focusing on other people and making sure you can serve them to the best of your ability. And eventually things start falling into place.
And I'll tell you, like I officially started, of course, in January, and one of the first, and I had been working on a little bit before then, was my first transaction, and I helped with was helping Simmons College purchase the first African American school for kids. That it was Central High School, the original Central High School, and it had just fallen flat. It was so funny. I think I was at a party or something, and I was talking to somebody, and they were talking about it, and they were like, yeah, but it just fell flat, and we couldn't get it. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna work on that. I'm gonna work on that. And I started, making those connections. I talked to Dr. Cosby. I talked to Simmons College. And then, I was able to kind of pull resurrect a deal that had been dead. And just for that, to start that off, I was like, okay, I can do this. This is not rocket science. You just got to have those interpersonal skills. I can do this. And that kind of really gave me the momentum, to kind of continue on. And then it was like, and I'm sure you experienced this too, it was like dead. I mean, I was like planting all these seeds, and, they say, just keep planting seeds. Well, I was ready for some of them to grow. I'll be honest with you. Yeah. I didn't want any more weeds. I wanted some flowers. Okay.
Yeah.
And it started happening. I mean, it was slow. It kind of like I had that high, and then it was like nothing. Now I was just planting all these little seeds, and I was like, I wasn't giving up, but I was like, we gotta, because this is my second career. I don't have a lot of time. We gotta get this going. And all of a sudden stuff just started popping up. And I was like, whoa, and, which is great. And, it's continuing to. One other thing that I have learned, you were asking me, Jeff, this is something that I have learned. You can't be protective of your time. And that's something that I have kind of balanced, because at first I was like my goal was to bring everybody to the table. Well, I realized everybody don't want to eat. So you can't bring everybody to the table. So when to cut it off. And that's something, and Raphael and I, we've talked about that, you can't spend your time with people that ain't ready to move. And, you always leave it where I put it back on them, whatever it was, if I give them whatever they need to, I say, here it is, just contact me. But I've gotten a feeling now when it's time to cut off, or at least back off and let them kind of come back to me if they're ready to move forward. Because when I first started, I was showing stuff on Saturdays. I still will. And that's I have that kind of mentality that I show property whenever, because they say, well, commercial real estate is only supposed to, they work 9 to 5, they work Monday through Friday. Well, see, I've been on the other side, and I'm thinking, well, you're telling me that, but I need to work 9 to 5 so I can pay for this property. So we need to reverse this. So I don't have a problem doing that. But I remember, this is really funny. I remember I was showing these guys wanted a coffee shop, and I was going like on Saturday, showing them blah, 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 showing them and everything. And we thought we had nailed something down. And then, we got to the LOI, I typed that up. It was perfect and things. And then the future landlord asked for their financials and I looked at them, I was like, they're not going to get this. I mean, I was like, I should have asked for this first, It was just dead. I was like, what, see you later. See you later. I'm moving on. But it was a great learning experience. And, that just be protective of your time, help people who want to be helped.
Yeah, that's a great advice. And Jeff knows this. We were, I had been working with this lady who wanted to start a bakery for many months. And, I took an interest in trying to make it happen because, she's from Cuba, primarily Spanish speaking. She didn't speak a whole lot of English. And obviously I speak Spanish as well. So I was really trying to get her into a space so she could live out the dream that she was wanting to live out. Now, as we started getting deeper and deeper into the process, she started realizing things that weren't shared at the beginning related to financing and everything else. And then, I come to find out about 12 or 16 months later, they had filed, bankruptcy months ago or whatever, years ago. And things just kind of plummeted after that. And that wasted, 12 to 16 months of my time with these individuals. And I took an interest in trying to help them because I really wanted to see them succeed. I wanted them to build a business that was worthwhile for them, but come to find out now I'm out time, a lot of time. I know I had Jeff come by to check out a few spots for them. Ultimately it wasted his time, which, I obviously felt bad about myself because I really thought we were going to be able to get this done. And, there's just lessons you learn. And now, similar to you, I'm very diligent about anytime I start working with someone, I'm like, okay, here's a list of things that I need to give you. And then I've written a book on commercial leasing, and I literally hand them the book and I said, hey, read these chapters. This is exactly what I need from you even before we start anything. And it's helped me immensely. Now, if I go to a space to show someone, I already have their tax returns. I already have, bank statements or whatever that we need ready. So if they're ready to, once we think that the space is great, I take all that stuff, send the LOI, and I'm like, hey, this is what we're going to do. And I try to set the expectations early on, in particular if a use is going to be harder to find. Like if it's like sometimes smoke shops or tattoo shops or stuff like that aren't necessarily the most attractive from the landlord side. You kind of set that expectation up front saying, this is going to maybe take some time and these are the hurdles you're going to face. Again, this is all just things you learn after you do it for a couple of years. And I've been in it for 3 years now. So, I'm starting to get the hang of it. I'm definitely not anywhere near where I need to be, but it's a lot to learn.
And I think, Raphael, we can take, I can take some things from residential. And one of those things, you think about it, before they show a house, they're pre-approved. We don't ask for pre-approval letters, and I understand, but we need to vet more. So that's something that I think we can definitely, do before we, continue to spin our wheels with something. Like I said, I've had people that, they want the Taj Mahal, but they on a sardine budget. And, it's just like, it ain't gonna work. At some point, you're just like, it's not gonna work.
Yeah. Exactly. No, I actually have to vet people in commercial contracting as well, because they may have went through the process to get the money to lease the space, but they didn't do any construction or renovation cost in there. So I'm like, what are we gonna do here? Like, how are you gonna pay for this? Am I gonna get free smoothies for 5 years? Like, what's going on here? But yeah, so I had to do the vetting process as well to save everyone's time. But earlier you were kind of speaking to like the investor side, and I kind of wondered, like, what are some of the criteria that you actually look for being a seasoned investor when you're trying to get a building or a property?
I don't really have a formula. It just has to make sense. And I say it makes sense. It can be anywhere. You know, I have invested, like I told you, I started off, just, picking up the hair salon / chiropractor office, and then, some office condos, which I'm like a proponent of office condos. I think it is like the best way to get into commercial real estate with less, I call it the gateway to commercial real estate. Because, it just kind of makes sense. You don't have to spend a lot of money and the cash flow is pretty good. And then, Jeff, I just started, I mean, if I really don't care what it is, as long as it makes sense. One of the projects that I'm probably most proud of is I bought it was a mixed use property on Jefferson Street and 20th and Jefferson Street. I bought it for $59,000. I mean, cheap. It was distressed. I mean, it was really, and my husband is looking like, okay, has she lost her mind? I was like, Sean, I see it. Okay. We've got the 2 apartments here. We've got the commercial piece here. I see it. It's going to happen. And so, I bought it, and then I was looking through, I love the appraisal. I looked through all of that because it just gives me so much good information. Well, when I was looking, because I thought it was like all commercial, I thought the bottom was commercial and, of course, the top was residential. I realized it really was all residential, and there was just a conditional use for downstairs. And I was like, oh, shoot, well, that means I've got to do a zoning change. So I went through that whole process. I did it myself. I pat myself on the back. Got it changed to commercial down at the bottom. And it wasn't, it's just a test of endurance. Zoning is not difficult. If I can do it, anybody can. It's just a test of endurance, following up and making sure you do everything. I finished upstairs off, and I tell people all the time, I only create spaces that I would want to move into. So whatever I did in the East End, if I have a property, that's what I'm going to do in West Louisville. So I created these 2-bedroom. I had a 2-bedroom and a 2-bedroom and a 1-bedroom apartment upstairs. And so I was showing it, and I was like, well, I guess I'll be, because we haven't finished downstairs, I guess I'll be, a landlord, residential landlord. And I had this couple to come in and say, well, I think we're going to take both of them. I was like, well, that's strange. They're taking both of the apartments. And then they said, well, we kind of need to explain. We've been wanting to do an Airbnb. We live in West Louisville, and we want to do an Airbnb. And this is perfect. It's right close to downtown. And this is what we like to do. And they have created the most amazing space ever. It is amazing. They keep it booked, and they've only been live like, I think a month. And they have people from all over the country that are coming to West Louisville to stay there. And so that, those are the kinds of like feel good kinds of investments that, it's been profitable for me, but it's also doing good for the community. I like properties, not that distressed usually. I like them where, we talk about value add. And that works, well for us. We actually, and actually, Raphael had the 5-plex in the Highlands, and it was so funny. I know Raphael was probably tired of me because I think it went under contract, and then it didn't. And I was like calling him like immediately. I think I called you like within 10 seconds, didn't I? Raphael?
Yeah. Well, it was great. I was happy. I was like, oh, Bridget.
I was like, Raphael, I want this. We are going to go to closing. Please, we are going to close. And we did, didn't we?
Yeah, you did.
So I took this space, and I don't think it had been touched since the 1940s, 50s, maybe 50s, 60s. They still had nothing had been touched. And so, but I felt like it was a great opportunity to do some value add, kind of roll up our sleeves, get some work done. And so we totally gutted that. Totally gutted it. And we went from, I tell people all the time, I had some questionable people in there. I don't know what they really did, but I don't think they had like a W-2, whatever they were doing. We went from having, within probably 8 months or so, from having people like that to having medical doctors, residents moving in. We put granite countertops. We really made a Highlands apartment, but more modern, I mean, totally gutted it. And we got the clientele that we wanted, but I go back to it. We spent the money. We put a lot of money into it. I mean, we put, flooring, new kitchen, everything, but those are the type of people that we want. We have Bellarmine graduate students in it now in one of our apartments, the 3-bedroom one. I have a college. I have somebody who works at the university. I mean, those are the people. And somebody said, well, what you're charging, they're only going to stay a couple of years, because we're really at the 90th percentile as far as rates, market rate. But you know what? I'm like, it doesn't matter how long they stay, because they're going to take care of it, because I've got the caliber of people, they're going to take care of it. And I don't expect anybody to stay in my apartment for 20 years. Stay 2 or 3 years, and then let me find somebody who can help you buy a house, Yeah. So I think those were probably, our biggest projects that we've had. But I realized last year, this time, we had like 5 or 6 projects going on. You know how one is supposed to finish before another one starts, and they just all start overlapping. And I started looking through my phone. I was like, well, that's why we were so crazy last year, because we had like a whole bunch going on. But and then I told my husband this time, I said, this has been a great experience, don't get me wrong, but I really want to focus more on the brokerage side now. But I think those are the two probably that have been, the ones that I'm most proud of.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know. And I'll speak to the fiveplex. It was, you did a 180 on those ones. It was great. Good to see. And it is in a phenomenal location. So I mean, it's literally in a corridor where, you can access, the major thoroughfare for BARTs, there's so many retail restaurants and everything else in that area. So no, I'm looking forward. I mean, you sent me pictures of the unit once you completed it, and I was just like night and day different. So it was really cool to see. So one thing I was kind of curious about is, what are some of the, could you kind of talk through maybe maybe some of the issues that you faced as you're going through the project for maybe one of those properties, whether that's the Jefferson Street property or maybe the Hepburn property? What are some of the things that you encounter that you were able to navigate to now reposition the property so that it is producing at what you envisioned it to produce?
Well, I'll be honest with you, especially Jefferson Street, COVID kind of just messed all of that up. Everything was kind of stalled. Once I started my Highlands project, we were kind of not past COVID, but people were back to work. What killed me is that, during COVID or right after, people weren't working. And, you set a deadline and, it wasn't happening. If you had it was one of the two things. Either you didn't have the materials or you didn't have the workers, or both. So, when I started the Highland project, we got all new windows.
Mm-hmm.
They were like running 3 months out, and just delays after delays. I don't feel that as much now,
Mm-hmm.
where I can go buy something and it's there, or they can, it's a turnaround time in a couple of weeks as compared to 3 months. COVID really, it made a lot of projects just linger on too long.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I can attest to that. I mean, I had a window in the rear of my fourplex that I own in Old Louisville that the tenant had broken. And so we had to literally board it up because there was nothing I could do. I couldn't just put tape over it. And so we had to board up the window, and it was boarded up for almost 2.5 months because the window took that long to get, because it was a custom window. It wasn't, normal size that you would see in a lot of these newer developments. It was an Old Louisville window that was, really odd shaped and whatever else. And so I felt terrible because I wouldn't want to live in an environment where that was the case, but I was hamstrung as far as my options because of the fact that, the things were running so behind. And so I always kept him up abreast of the things that were going on, gave him updates just so he understood that, we were still trying to move forward. But I mean, that's just the reality. Unfortunately, what we faced during COVID is you kind of had to adapt, and, ultimately you did. And hopefully down the line, especially, the Hepburn property, I'm not sure about the Jefferson Street. It seems like you've done great work on both projects. So.
And another thing, as you were talking, I think communication is the key. And I do really try to communicate with my tenants. I think that's why, and it's really gratifying when you have a property or you have a tenant and then the tenant refers you to somebody else. I mean, that's a testament. And so I try to make sure, make sure we're communicating, one of my subs, and I repeat this all the time. He says this all the time. Communication is understanding. And it truly is. And as long as you're communicating with me, I am so sorry this is not happening. I can't, I followed up and it's still not happening. I think they will kind of give you a little leeway. We have a property in New Albany where we have been dealing with the HVAC. And make a long story short, the guy did not, the HVAC is not large enough for the space. So he was coming back all the time. It's a brand new unit. And I have a tenant who uses it. She's a photographer, but she also leases it out to photographers. So she's doing really well with it, but it was always hot, and of course they were frustrated with the process, but they appreciated me because I always answer the phone. That's one of the things. I answer the phone and we try to come up with a plan. And I think, communication, like I said, is understanding. And that's how you keep good tenants. And when they refer you to somebody else, that's just a testament to what we're doing. Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I can agree more.
Definitely. So if someone is looking to make that leap into commercial, jump into the investing side and things, is there any advice that you would give them to just starting out with that, or to make sure they get financials ready, to what's your advice for them to make the leap?
Are you talking about somebody who wants to be an agent, or somebody who wants to invest
in both? You could do both, probably.
If you want to do both.
Okay.
Because we have a very broad audience of people. Yeah. So
if somebody wants to actually be an advisor, be an agent, I think the first thing would be to make sure they pull in all their connections, make sure that people know what they're doing, something new that they're doing. And I think, that is so important, because you just don't, like we talk about, if you do good, if you're always doing good, good will come to you. Put it out there in the universe. This is what I'm doing and I need your help. And you would be surprised, like I said, the people, even if they're not buying it, they can connect you with someone. But just, making sure that people know. Social media has helped a lot with that, putting it out on social media. I actually took out a couple of ads. I'm a believer in ad. That's something that a lot of residential agents do. One of my mentors is Terry Bass, who is, she's done a real good job with marketing herself. And I was like, what do you do? She says, I put ads in. You don't know which one will work, but people will. And it was so funny, Jeff. I was at the polo match, this Oxmoor polo match this weekend, and this guy came up to me and he said, I know you. Do you sell commercial real estate? He said, I saw you in this magazine. Now, and then he told me, he said, I've got something going on, a deal going on. And I think he's an attorney, but he helps people, and she's going to need, something, and I'll be calling you soon. And I was like, well, that worked. So just put yourself out there. I try to go to everything. I try to engage people, anywhere there are people, I try to go to, and just, kind of making those connections. And what I found is one connection generates 5. And then those 5 generate 5. And then it just kind of continues on. So I just do that, just kind of, put it out there, and then start educating yourselves, reading Raphael's books. I do all the podcasts, I'll be honest with you, I don't like to fly. And so I have to keep my mind on something. So Raphael, one of yours I listened to like 3 times because it was like an hour and a half long. I don't know which one it was, but it got me through wherever I was going, it got me through it, right? But listening to podcasts and reading, I think, and then just interacting with like-minded people. I know we've done some meetups together, Raphael, which have been really important, and just getting in that space. So that's what I would say for people who are, trying to get into the business. People who are trying to invest in commercial real estate. First of all, get your affairs in order, know how much you're able to actually, spend on a property. I think those are, really important. And also to get, if you don't have some subcontractors or people to do things, I say, go ahead and start getting your network of those. And you need about 5 of each, because if they're good, at least 4 of them are going to be busy from the time you need them. So you need 5 electricians, you need 5 painters. And I'll be honest with you, Jeff, I did the same thing with my subs. Like if I had a good sub, well, do you have somebody that does towel? Do you have somebody? And I'll just start writing them down. I would just write them down, and the list changes because, they get busy or whatever. But I would say, that would be important too. And then kind of decide what asset class you want to be in. Which one do you want to start with? Do you want to start with office buildings, warehouse, apartments, retail, what's your sweet spot? I think those are all things. And then just dive in, analysis paralysis will keep you on the sideline. And I think at some point in time, you just got to pull the trigger.
Yeah. That's some great advice, really. In particular on the investing front, because, analysis paralysis is a real thing. Before I got into investing, I was just like scared out of my mind because I'd never spent anything near that amount when I first bought my first property in Old Louisville, and I was just going through all the different scenarios of things that could go wrong, and it kind of messes with your head, and then ultimately you buy it, and things do go wrong, but you manage them and you get through them, and then now it's like you get to a point where it's like, oh wow, like I'm glad I made that decision 4 years ago or 5 years ago, because it's gotten to me where I'm at today. And on the brokerage front, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it is a unique industry in that it is an eat what you kill business. So it's a much different than, a 9-to-5, corporate environment. When I got into it, I came from that environment, and it was a very difficult transition to do, just because there's no consistency when it comes to that sort of thing. And building that network is key in business, because like you said, one person leads to 5 connections. There's something called a network effect, which I read on in one of these books. And it was, if you're connected to 200 people and they themselves are connected to 200 unique people, you're connected to 40,000 people within a 2 degree of separation. So, I mean, and 2 degrees of separation is nothing, right? You could ask your friend who knows another person, say, hey, can I get an introduction? And that is an easy connection for them to make, and then ultimately you potentially get an opportunity out of it. And so the stuff that you're doing with the podcasting, the fact you're getting out there and interacting with as many people as possible, allows that network effect to take shape. Because now people say, oh yeah, Brigitte is in brokerage. We had a conversation the other day at this event, or, I listened to Brigitte on a podcast episode, a few weeks ago, and she had talked about her experiences, and I connected to that in some way, based on her story or whatever else. I'm going to reach out to her, or maybe I know someone who maybe should reach out to her. And so again, the more nodes you create, obviously the more opportunities present themselves. So.
Yeah. So Brigitte, I just wanted to start saying, as we start kind of rounding out the podcast here, I really appreciate you taking the time, and I love listening to your story and all the experiences you have, and just your enthusiasm. I love it about investing and being a commercial and helping people. So one of the questions is what is one of the most impactful books that you've ever read? I know that you said that you're reading and listening to podcasts and stuff like that, but or listen to, it can be an audio book too. And it doesn't have to pertain to investing or commercial real estate. It can be, anything that's maybe changed the trajectory of your life or for the better.
One book that I read, and I hope I got the title, it's just Understanding Commercial Real Estate. It's an old book. And I read that, and every time I've read it a couple of times, and every time I read it, I learned something else. And when I bought, I don't know who told me to buy it. I think it was maybe a podcast or whatever. And, I think I had that, and I had a book on investing in residential, real estate as well. But that one is one that I just keep going back to, and it just it even makes more sense than it did when I read it, before. So, I probably do more podcasts than I do just books, but that's probably a book that, that really stands out.
Yeah, no, for sure. Any podcast recommendations as well? I think that would be, helpful. I know there's a lot of people out here, they're listening to the podcast. So they are, people who are either driving places. That's one of the cool things about podcasts. You can literally be doing anything and literally listen to someone share some insights regarding whatever topic the podcast is about. So if you don't mind sharing maybe one or two of your favorites, I think that'd be great.
Of course, love yours. Let me just look out for you.
No, you don't have
to. Bigger pockets.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love Bigger Pockets. And I probably viewed probably most of those and enjoy them.
Awesome. That's great, Chair. Well, Brigitte, again, we thank you so much for your time. This has been a very insightful and inspiring podcast. I'm hopeful that, I'm really excited to hear what the audience has to say about this particular episode. One of the things we like to ask at the end of our podcast episode is we like to ask our guests to contribute something to what we call the commercial real estate treasure chest. It's a repository of resources that we make available to our audience, and we've had people contribute helpful PDFs, spreadsheets, ebooks, really anything they feel would be of value to the audience. So if you don't mind kind of sharing, what are you willing to contribute today?
I've been giving that a lot of thought. I think what I want to do is give our communication that we give to our tenants, just, how we kind of, it's almost like a handbook, kind of what we are, how we support them, what we expect and how they go about, being a part of, leasing our space. So I think that would be good because it really just kind of gives, sets both of us up for success. Let me say that.
Absolutely. That would be huge. And just on my personal front, I probably use it as well because, whenever new tenants move into my apartment, for example, like I don't necessarily have a defined process that says, here, this is the expectations. It's more verbal, but having an actual physical copy of something to kind of share with them so they can reference it. And if anything comes up, you can always say, hey, look, this is the expectations. This is what we set. That would be super helpful. So,
because what we know is if it's not written down, it didn't happen.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Brigitte, thanks again. We really appreciate, all your insights, everything. But I know other people are going to want to contact you. So which, platform would you like them to reach out to you? And if you could just let us know.
Well, they can email me at Brigitte, BRIGITTE at PRGproperty.com, or they can contact me on my cell phone, 502-387-1957. I'm always available.
That's awesome. Yeah. And for those of you guys who are listening in the podcast format, we'll share that in the description. And if you guys are watching this on YouTube, go ahead in the description and we'll include that as well. So you guys can contact Brigitte and, potentially work with her on the acquisition or selling or leasing of commercial property. So, all right. Well, Brigitte, thank you again so much for your time. We do greatly appreciate it. For those of you guys who are listening to this podcast, we would greatly appreciate it if you could leave a 5-star review. It really makes a world of difference in our ability to reach a broader audience. Along with that, if you guys are watching this on YouTube, we would greatly appreciate it if you could like and subscribe to this channel. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm and ensures more and more people can hear this message and learn about the many facets of commercial real estate. So thank you all so much for tuning in, and we'll see you all next time.